Awesome. I think we're recording now. I know we have some people from a few different schools. I know we have a student here from Spain, I believe. So yeah, welcome wherever you're flying in from, wherever you're zooming in from. We appreciate that you're all here. I'm John. We've met, and I'm really excited to be introducing this workshop. This is something that I really wanted to learn because when I thought about prototyping, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And someone who does know what to do is standing right here next to me, Courtney Young. She can introduce herself way better than I can. So I'll let her take it away from here and go for the screen share whenever you want, Courtney.
Oh yeah, I forgot. It's part of my job. Okay. Oh, I nearly clicked to leave again. That's bad UX there. Okay. I'm gonna stop your music, John. Screen. Okay. Are we seeing this? I believe you're seeing it. Cool. Okay. I just want to start by thanking everyone for tuning in. I know it's probably been a long week or a long day for a lot of you who have been participating in Produthon. Yeah, I really hope that you guys are able to apply all your skills and learn new skills and are having a really awesome time here. And yeah, I'm so excited to be able to hopefully show you guys a new skill, maybe brush up on some of the Figma tools that you may have used before. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through a few things that I have just to introduce what we're gonna be looking at here, what you're looking at here as well. I'll introduce myself. Yeah, okay. So, like I said, welcome. This workshop is definitely geared towards beginners or intermediate Figma users. So if you're like looking at Figma for the first time right now and you're getting very overwhelmed by like the different side panels and like different words and numbers that don't really mean much to you yet, do not fret. We're going to be going through all of that today, but we're going to be working towards building a prototype that will be definitely like showcase ready, something that's definitely high fidelity, and we're going to be able to do it in like 50 minutes to an hour. So this is definitely a good starting place for you to be able to build something that shines. So all you really need is a Figma account, and then from there you can set up a blank canvas on Figma. On the starter file, you'll just find like a few elements to kind of begin the designs, but we're going to be doing everything from scratch. So you just need a blank artboard and we'll be walking through everything. If you're not in Figma right now, you can also just watch. It's kind of like a monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. So maybe later, if you have some more time or more energy, you can try this stuff out on your own and refer back to this file as kind of like your starting point. So we're going to be covering kind of the overall architecture of Figma, including like how files are organized, what are like files in Figma. We'll be looking at what like pages, frames, layers are, different visual design elements and how Figma kind of supports these things. We'll be looking at actually how to build prototypes and bring your designs to life by adding motion and transitions. And then I'll also be showing you how to demo your prototype so that when you're presenting your work at your exhibition to the judges, you're able to kind of communicate your product better at this exhibition. And then I'll also walk you through some of my favorite resources as a designer and kind of show you like where I get started when I'm starting a new project and where I source inspiration. So our itinerary, we're going through the welcome right now, of course. I'm going to introduce myself a bit better once I'm done here, and then we're going to dive right into Figma. I'll be sharing my screen this whole time for you to follow along. And the prototype that we're going to be building is going to be kind of like a fun, quirky thing. It has no real like user experience, but it will be like a fun thing for us to build here. It's called Doghouse. It is a knockoff of Clubhouse. Maybe not knockoff. I sourced inspiration from Clubhouse. We'll put it that way. So yeah, that'll be like a fun step-by-step tutorial that we'll be going through. At the end, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite resources as a designer, and then there'll also be like 10 to 15 minutes for any questions, any Q&A. I can answer anything about Figma or about my experience in design. So if you have any questions, feel free to turn on your mic anytime that I'm doing something here, or you can hold your questions for the end. But yeah, I would love to hear from you. So if you're comfortable turning on your mic, that would be cool. Otherwise, feel free to type anything into chat. Sarah's joining me today, and she's going to be moderating the chat. So thank you to Sarah here. Yeah, how long did that take? Okay, we're at 1 minute past. Anyone else hearing that feedback? Am I going crazy? Okay. Anyway, so I'm Courtney. It's nice to meet you all. I graduated from UBC in 2020. I did my degree in computer science and biology. My kind of journey into design is actually quite young. I only really learned what design was when it comes to like technology in 2019. So this whole world of design is very new and exciting for me still. And a lot that I do with design has been self-taught. So I'm really excited to kind of like pass forward my knowledge onto you all and kind of show you that design is approachable for beginners. You don't need any like formal education or any kind of, any kind of like crash course to design. You can just really pick it up on your own. There's so many resources out there for beginners. So yeah, my kind of self-taught design actually has led me to my role now as a product designer at a startup called Snack. At Snack, we are building a video-first dating site, and I get to work with our small design team of 3 in building the user experience for this app. It's been really engaging, and I've learned probably more about design in the past 3 months than I did in like my entire degree. So it just shows you that doing these internships or doing any kind of experience like this in design in industry is just an awesome way to kind of pick up these skills in like a real context. So on top of working for Snack, I'm also a design lead for the UBC Product Management Club, which is why I'm here. Other things about me that you might not know is that I am a cat mom, which you will probably become well aware of by the end of the tutorial. My cat makes multiple appearances during our step-by-step walkthrough of the prototype. And I'm also a photographer. Some of the pictures that I've taken of my cat are in the prototype as well. I love to cook, I love to cycle, and I love sweets. Yeah, that's probably all that you need to know about me. But yeah, I've been using Figma for 1.5 years, and it was the first design tool that I really learned. And I would say that it's kind of what inspired me to pursue design. I found it just so fun to be able to build something from scratch, like something just out of like rectangles and like circles, and make it look like an actual user interface that you would see like websites or in apps. So yeah, I really hope that what you guys can learn here will inspire you to maybe not pursue design, but apply design in your own work as a PM or whatever you guys are looking to pursue. So yeah, are there any questions before we jump into the next part? I'm gonna take a sip of water. Okay, cool. So before I kind of preview the final prototype to you, I'm just gonna give like a full disclaimer as to what's gonna be happening in this workshop. So like I mentioned, it's going to be very beginner focused. I'm gonna be walking through mostly like all the things you need to know as like a beginner to Figma, but we'll be applying these skills to produce something that's actually quite high fidelity. So this is a good opportunity for you as you're kind of building these products for the exhibition round of Produthon, because this gives you the opportunity to be able to communicate your products to the judges. So yeah, I do have to admit that what we're doing here is not going to be like a crash course to user-centric design. We're not going to be covering anything like design principles or like do a thorough recap of like what the design process is. So what we're doing here is kind of like zooming right into the late design phase, which is where maybe you have like wireframes or really light prototypes and you're kind of trying to refine them and make them come to life. So yeah, we're going to be jumping into that. But if you are an aspiring designer and you're finding that this kind of UI design is not satisfying all of your cravings for like user-centric design, I do have some resources that I'll share with you all at the end of our hour together. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever to ask any design related questions or any question about anything. So yeah, I'm excited to potentially get to know you guys and build something cool together here. Yeah, I think that's it for my intro. Any other questions before we get started? Okay, cool. All right, so I am sharing my screen so you're kind of getting a sense of what Figma looks like from kind of like the final finished product point of view. Like we see that we have all of our elements here, they're organized here, but I'm gonna kind of go from the beginning. So if you were opening Figma for the first time, what would you see and how would you start a new project, for example? So usually when you open Figma, it brings you to like your landing page. For me, it's my recents page. So these are all of the different files from different projects or different teams that I work on. We're going to jump into this team. So a team is basically like a group of collaborators that you have on Figma. With it being a browser-based software, it means that it's really great for teams to like co-design at the same time. So it's really robust and powerful that way. So that's why, yeah, it works so well for software teams. So here you can see that I have 3 different teams. I have Snack, PMC, and then this random team here. And within that, you have projects within your team. So for example, for the Product Management Club, I have a project just for events, which contains all the files with designs that are event related. And then we also have branding stuff. So within this project, we'll find the individual files. And I mean, you probably don't need to keep your files this organized. This is just like a good way to make sure that you know where everything is. Figma is really great for that kind of organization. So yeah, this is just maybe good practice for design if you're expecting to be making lots of different designs in different places for different people. Yeah, so I'm gonna jump into one of these just so that we can see what the elements of a file might look like. So here we've got an artboard or your canvas. Some things to note while we're looking at this is you've got your main menu bar or toolbar. We'll be going through each of these tools and actually applying mostly all of them here. So we'll get kind of an inside scoop on how to apply any of these. We've got 2 panels. So what we're looking at on the left side would be your layers. Layers probably synonymous with like elements. So in your layers, you would have a frame which captures all of the, within your frame, you would have like different shapes and groups. So if we're looking at something like this, we notice that the elements or the layers within this page change. So things like this would be a frame and this would capture the entire artboard of designs. What else can I cover here? So of course, if you're trying to like organize your file really well, you would start a new page, and maybe I'd call this Produthon. And this would be the start of this artboard here where I would have all my Produthon related designs. And then on the right side, which might be hard to see everything on a blank canvas, but on the right side, we basically have all of the specifications for the different layers or elements that I have on my artboard. It looks pretty daunting here, but once we actually apply these tools, you'll kind of see how the specifications of a shape or whatever change and how you can manipulate shapes to build the designs that you want. Yeah, and then of course, up here, you'll get to see all the people that are collaborating with you when you're working on this design. Right now, I'm the only person in this file. It's getting kind of lonely over here. You can also share your file or your designs with people. Since it's just browser-based, it makes it really easy for anyone, whether they have Figma or not, to view whatever you've worked on. And then we'll look at how to present your prototypes and designs as well. Yeah, I think that kind of covers everything at a really high level. So when you're opening a new file, this is what you'll be seeing. I hope that's not too daunting so far, but we'll see that in the end, this stuff doesn't really matter because you'll be applying it so often that you won't look at the high level of the architecture of Figma anyway. So yeah, I think we're going to be starting with a new artboard now anyway. So I'm going to start a brand new file here. And this is going to be called, oh, you know what I didn't cover actually? I didn't actually show you what we were designing today. Why don't I do that first before we start from scratch? Okay, so what I'm going to be jumping into now is kind of the steps I would take to build a prototype like this. I'm going to present this just so you guys can all get excited for what we're building here. So we're gonna, this screen is going to be kind of the bonus screen, doing a small little animation like that. We're going to learn how to make a landing page for a mobile app, which has some prototyping kind of functionality. We can scroll. We can like change pages here. It's really small just so that we can focus on all the different elements that make up a landing page here. So we'll be able to build each of these cards from scratch and then also prototype these kinds of transitions as well. So this is what we're going to be working towards. Time-wise, I think we're good. So if there aren't any questions, I think I'm going to get started with the actual step-by-step walkthrough of this. Cool. Let me take a sip of tea first. My mouth is getting so dry. Okay, awesome. So if you guys are working along with me, you'll be able to find some of the elements that I'm going to be using within this starter file. So I'm going to be importing images and graphics from my Finder, of course, but if you want to use your own images, you can. Otherwise, you can kind of find all the starter elements here. This looks silly looking at it, actually. Like, anyway, this is my cat. If anyone cares, this one's Persephone. You'll get to learn a bit more about her near the end of our tutorial. This is my parents' cat. Her name is Misha. She hates me. She won't even let me like get within a meter of her. And of course, it's Persephone again, looking like an absolute devil. I don't know these dogs. I just found these on the internet, but I think they're cute. Okay, I'm getting distracted now. Okay, oh, I'm getting excited. All right. So we've got our blank artboard here, and I'm going to come into this menu bar here. I'll see that it's being contained in a project called drafts. I haven't put it into like my PMC folder or my snap folder, so it's just living here in drafts. That's kind of the default. I can rename this file to doghouse, just so it's easier for me to find. And yeah, this is kind of our starting point here. Something to note as we get started, that I mentioned something called a frame and a page before. Once we get started, we'll notice that I have a single page. I'm on page 1 right now. And on my page, I will be building frames, and frames are synonymous with screens. I can build a custom frame using this tool here, which is, I don't know, it's kind of like a hashtag, or, I mean, it's probably not what it's meant to look like. But anyway, this is the frame tool. This basically builds just like a blank rectangle, whatever, that all of your elements are going to be contained within. So like I said, it's synonymous with a screen. I can choose some default dimensions for it. So if I'm going to be working with a mobile app, I'm going to be designing something for mobile, I could choose from some of the default dimensions here. I think I'm going to be doing iPhone 11 Pro, which seems like an upgrade from my phone. I still have the first generation SE, so like this looks impressive to me. This is a big phone. That's awesome. Yeah, so this would be my beginning frame. On top of that, of course, you can also build frames for desktop, tablet. You could build a slideshow using presentation. This is basically, yeah, just kind of your blank document. And of course, you can also build like a custom shape if you're working with some phone from like 2003. Maybe it would look something like that. I don't know. Yeah, so that's where we start. Right now, I have my phone screen for an iPhone 11, and I'm going to be adding kind of a background to it, something that all of my cards and elements are going to be overlaid over. So I'm going to cheat and just copy over my color palette that I'm going to be using for Doghouse here, just to make it easier for me. Oh my God, that is so big. Okay, so in Figma, of course, copying and pasting works the same as anywhere. I basically just selected all of these by dragging, copy, paste. Yeah, so the first tool we're going to be looking at here will be our rectangle tool, which is represented just by our square here. We'll see from the drop down that this is where most of our shape tools live. From this rectangle tool, you can build anything. You can build your lines, your triangles, your stars, and also you can place images from this as well. We're going to be starting with a rectangle, and we'll probably walk through most of the tools here anyway, just so that I can show you the different specifications for these different shapes and how they can be applied in a user interface. So I'm building a rectangle here. I want this to fill the entire frame, so I'm going to drag it from the top left corner all the way to the bottom, and you'll see that Figma does like a really good job of snapping things right into place. You can see this by the red line. I don't know if you can see that, it's way too, anyway. So this makes it really easy for you to keep your shapes consistent. Oh man, there we go. So this is our starting point. I'll have to explain to you guys after why I'm starting with a rectangle and not just filling the entire frame. But we'll see that once we actually get to the prototyping part. But for now, this is our rectangle. We'll see that it has different specifications here. For example, the x coordinates, we know that it's sitting at 0 and 0, so it's in that top left corner. This is like the width and height of it, which is also the same as our frame. So when we were looking at the frames, the dimensions here refer to the points or pixels of that element. And the same applies to any of the shapes that we're working with today. So I guess something to note as well, if you're moving around between different shapes and different tools, kind of the base thing that you want to come back to is the move tool, which is, so like if I were in this and I tried to click, it would just build a rectangle. But if you find that you're kind of stuck there, you can click V on your keyboard or click this just so that you can manipulate these shapes using your cursor. Okay, I feel like that was probably a very thorough intro to rectangles, but here we've got this element, our frame, which contains the rectangle here, and we're going to be starting by just changing its fill. So here, this is the hex code for the color that it is right now. The default is always gray. The percentage here refers to the opacity or the transparency. So at 100%, this is completely opaque. You won't be able to see anything behind it. So this is a good starting point for us here. I'm going to be, I could just select a color with the color picker here and maybe draw something from my color palette, and that'll fill the entire rectangle, but that's a bit boring. I think we can do a bit better than solid pink, as much as I love that. So we're going to be going to the fill properties here, and we're going to select some other properties that your rectangle could have. So these basically just refer to different kinds of gradients. For my landing page, I'm going to work with a linear gradient, and we'll see from this bar, this is kind of the space where the color changes from the most transparent here, and then my base color here. To change the other side of the gradient, I'm going to select this side of the scale, use the color picker that I used before, and just choose this dusky lavender color that I think is just gorgeous. Yeah, so we have now achieved a beautiful gradient rectangle. Maybe I'll go a bit faster. Am I going too slow? I think this is good. Okay, we'll keep going.
Yeah, people like the pace.
Sweet. Okay. So we've looked at the fill properties of this rectangle. As a landing page, I find, okay, maybe this is a bit too opaque. This would make like a great splash screen, but I'm actually going to come back to here to the opacity and change this to maybe like 50% just to make this a bit more subtle. Okay. Okay, we've covered our first element. I'm just going to pull up the file on the screen just so I can see what I'm doing. The next thing would be to build that first card. This is kind of like the welcome card when you're first entering Doghouse. This kind of instructs the user as to what this app is and what it's about. And we're going to start by the same way as the background for our landing page. And we're just going to build another rectangle here. And like I said, Figma does a great job of snapping things into position. So if I wanted to center this card, I would just kind of wiggle it around until it snaps right into that center place where the red line is. From there, I'll walk through some other specifications associated with a rectangle. We know that a rectangle has a radius, so this refers to like how sharp the corners are. Actually, that's, oh, we also have, oh, Persephone's here. Nice, okay, you'll see more later. We also have kind of the orientation of the rectangles. If I wanted to spin this around, this would be at 90 degrees. We'll get to you soon, don't worry. Actually, I'm just gonna move on. I'm gonna get very distracted. Okay, you can say hi then. Okay, that's good. Bye. Okay, so back to this starting card. We're going to keep this at its original orientation. And we're going to fill it with the same tool that we used before to do the background. I'm just using the color picker, drawing from my palette that I've already made. And I'm also going to modify the quarter radiuses, radii, to make this kind of a softer shape. You can do this 2 ways, I guess maybe even 3 ways. The quarter radius lives here. I can kind of like scrub to change how sharp the corners are just by like moving my cursor from like right to left. Or I could just like type in something. I think 20 will do here. Also, like I showed before, you can also draw these corners in. But we're gonna keep that at 20. Okay, I'm just gonna kick her out actually. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay. So we've got the background for the first card that we're looking at here, and we're gonna have some simple text just to welcome the user to the interface. I'm gonna be selecting this text tool, which is just the T on our menu bar, and build a text box the same way that you do in a Google Doc or in Word. From here, I think I'm gonna say something like, welcome to Doghouse. In Figma, it defaults to Google's default text, which is Roboto. I think it's not saucy enough, so I'm going to be manipulating the text a little bit just to make it more inviting, more fun. So all the text qualities live here under layer, and we can see that this is the typeface that we're looking at. When you look at the typefaces in Figma, it's very overwhelming. You get an exhaustive list of all Google fonts. So you've probably got, I don't know, hundreds here. There's no previews for any of them. So a good start for new designers that like don't know what their favorite fonts are would be to go into your browser, Google fonts, and just kind of browse through all of them there. You can also preview them with the text that you want. So I've already done this, of course. I have my own favorite fonts. I know that it is called Josephine Sans. Oh, there you go. And yeah, this is the new typeface here. I noticed that Josephine Sans comes with a few different weights. So that just refers to like how bold it is. So these are our usual weights, and then we also have the italic weights here. So maybe I want something a little saucy, like light italic. That's how I would achieve that. It's also not very legible, so that's terrible. But I'm gonna go for semi-bold here and up the font size using this element here. I think something like 48. No, it won't. 24. Yeah, that was it. I'm gonna notice that the text we have here is kind of floating around in this text box, which is gonna make it hard for me to like actually center it in that card like I want to. So much like a text box in Word or whatever, you can kind of specify what the alignment is. So right now we have right aligned text. Oh, my laptop's dying. But right here, we want to be centering the text. So I'm gonna choose center alignment. And I'm also going to use a tool called Auto Width, which will just like snap the text box really tight into that text, making it even easier for me to manually work with the alignment here. So we're working with an Auto Width text box. And much like our rectangle, we can change the fill color. I'm just gonna slide this up to a nice clean white. So yeah, this is the first thing we're going to cover with text. I think it doesn't really get much simpler or much more complicated. It's much like any other word processor or software you might use. So that is a good start. For the next line of text, I'm just going to do Command D, which will duplicate my whole selection. You can use that for any element that you're working with on your artboard. Other shortcuts, of course, would be like Command C, Command V, or copy and paste. But I would say the one that I use the most in Figma is Command D, just because that just bypasses the copy paste part. So that applies to whatever element you're looking at. But yeah, we've got our second line of text here. I'm just gonna let users know what this app is. So Doghouse is a drop-in audio chat for pets. Like Clubhouse is for humans. Shrink that a bit, bring down the weight of the font just so that the hierarchy is right, so the user knows where to look first. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger though. Sure, that's good. Okay, so this is the first two elements of our card here, and I'm going to be importing some graphics into this card, just as like a visual delight. So like I said, from the rectangle tool here, we can place an image. This will just import images from your Finder. So I think I have the images I want here. I'm going to use these guys. So when you import images, they'll just kind of like live within your cursor, and you'll have to like tap to get them on your artboard. You can select these, like I said, from the starter file. I have them all there for you. These are just like simple PNGs that I got off of Figma Community, which I'll introduce you guys to later. It's a great resource for different graphics or plugins or whatever you use on Figma. So yeah, I've got my 4 images here. I select them all, and I'm just gonna shrink them down just so they fit on the card. There. That's so cute. Height-wise, I feel like the pointer should go first. Okay, this isn't important. I don't know why I'm doing this. I just can't stop. Okay, like you saw there, we can see that the alignment snaps into place. I can see that each of these are now 21 pixels apart. So if you're trying to be pixel perfect, that is good practice to do. There's other ways to test out alignment, but we won't go into those shortcuts just here. But there, we've got our 4 guests on. That's no good. Here's a second one. Yeah, it's better. Okay. Card is nearly done. I'm just gonna add a call to action to this card, just in case users want to learn more about what Doghouse is. We're gonna have a learn more button. And obviously this doesn't really look like a call to action. You wouldn't really know to click this. So I'm going to add an underline just to show that this is actionable. So within your text tools, you have kind of some hidden elements here, type details, and that's where you'll find things like superscripts and subscripts and different alignment things. So here, of course, we're just going to underline that, I think. That's about it for this first card. So within this frame, we see that we have all these illustrations. We have the background rectangle. I'm going to rename this by double tapping this just so it doesn't get lost. This is background. And we have everything within this card. So in order to make sure those kind of live within that orientation without me worrying about them getting mixed up, I'm going to select everything by selecting everything in this panel and do Command G, which groups these all. So that way, when I move the card, the whole thing moves, as opposed to before, when they weren't grouped. If I tried moving something, it would just be like the rectangle that moves. So like I did there, select everything, Command G, we're going to call this welcome card. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, I've got a couple more minutes to finish up this landing page. The rest of what we're doing on the landing page is going to be pretty straightforward just because we've looked at these basic elements. I'm going to be building a few more cards to go on this page. These are going to be the different chat rooms in Doghouse that are available right now. So building another rectangle. This one's going to be white with the same corner radius. And we're going to do, actually, no, we won't duplicate that yet. So the room is going to, oh, that's not a good idea. So this is white text on white, so I can't see it. where did it go? Anyway, doesn't matter. This is going to be Inner City Jack Russells, I believe. This is the name of the group hosting the chat. Snap this to the title around the text. I think also in my example, I show that you can also use emojis in text. So if you're really into emojis, I could select one from here. Which one looks like a city? Okay, you know what? This one will do. 2 of those. So yeah, you can add emojis to your text to add a little extra flair. I'm also going to be adding the description for the chat, which will be, did anyone actually let the dogs out? If so, who? Okay, this sounds like some sort of dog conspiracy theory. Sounds fun. Snap that into position. We're gonna make this a bit smaller so it fits. Okay. And then for these cards, of course, we usually have the avatars for the users that are hosting the chat. This one gets like a bit more complicated than what we've seen already, but we're going to be using a tool called a mask, which is essentially a shape, any size or any dimension shape that can.
Courtney, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
But Simran asked, how did we add emojis?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm using my Mac, so I have access to emojis on my keyboard, but you can also copy and paste them from anywhere. Or you could also use them as like a PNG or an image just by importing them. But I just used the functionality of my Mac keyboard to place that right into the text. Yeah, I hope that answers that. Cool. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be using a mask tool right now. So these avatars are usually circular. I'm going to build a circle. Something to be mindful of, if I just built a circle, it would actually just be like any dimension ellipse. But if you click shift, it'll snap it right into a circle, so you don't have to worry about it actually being symmetrical. So this is our circle here. I'm going to make a mask out of it by going to this top menu bar. There's a tool called Use as Mask. And that'll basically just take the outline here, and you won't be able to see like what's contained inside until I import an image. This is going to be our first Jack Russell. This is a big picture, so I'm gonna put it over here. So I can see this layer up here and the mask group, which is the circle that I made over here. And I'm gonna firstly shrink this down and select the image and place it into that mask group so that we can see it within the ellipse. We can't see it because the ellipse is over here and the image is over here. So I'm going to slide this guy over. Oh, so cute.
And there's another question. Somebody's asking, how did you make the mask again?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I said, you can make a mask out of any shape. So if I wanted to do a rectangle mask, this is the shape. And in this bar here is kind of this like shadow moon tool, use as mask. And it makes it into a mask group here, as you can see. And then you can import any element, any image into the mask, and it'll kind of contain it within that shape. That answers that question. Okay, so we've got this mask group, we've got the image of the Jack Russell. He doesn't quite fit, so make it a bit bigger. And yeah, this is a group. We can move this around and it'll stay stuck like that. And he is going to live in this card. I'm going to change the dimensions by holding shift and just moving my cursor on the corner, just so that it stays as a circle and not as like an oval. We don't want that. I'm gonna, not yet. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna duplicate him and give him a friend who is also hosting the chat. I'm obviously going to want another Jack Russell in there, just so that it's not just two of the same guy hosting a chat. So once I already have this mask and I want to import another image, I can kind of hover over where I've got my cursor, I've got the image, and paste him in. And oh no, he got cut off. Okay. So we've got this image that's filling this mask group. It doesn't quite fit well, so I'm going to look at these image properties and look at how it's being cropped, and I can see that he doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to slide him over to where he's being cropped to, and there he is. Okay, awesome. We're going to add a bit more text onto this card. Then we've got Spot. I don't know how I came up with these names, but Spot, that one's pretty standard. Lionel Richie. Uh-oh. And then who else is hosting it? A dog named Willow. Cool. I'm gonna left align this so that it snaps in better. And then I can see that they're each 9 pixels apart. And yeah, that is a good start. What I'm missing on this card is some of the iconography that indicates who's in the chat. So a plugin that I have that you guys won't have access to yourself, but you can install this plugin yourself to get a whole range of icons. But in this like menu bar, I've got my hamburger, and it shows me all the different plugins that I already have installed. I'm using one called Iconly, and it'll just give me a library of icons that I have installed on my Figma already, if it ever finishes loading. So I think for Clubhouse or for Doghouse, we have kind of a bunch of avatars which show how many people are in the room. I'm going to drag this over. Also with icons, you can also just treat them as images if you're importing them from another source that exports them as like PNGs or vectors. So feel free to do that. What are some other icons here? We have a little, what that be called? Like message, no, chat bubble. Yeah, that's the one. Also got a chat bubble, which we're adding here. This also kind of gets treated like an image. You can resize it, of course. Yeah, so we've got a bit of iconography. I will also be sharing some of my favorite resources for different kinds of graphics and illustrations and where you can find icons like this. But for now, if you don't have access to these yet, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm just doing this for pure aesthetics. But right now we've got the stroke on these icons have a fill of this kind of like purpley color, but I'm going to change it to gray by selecting the fill, doing the same color tool as before. And yeah, I believe, okay. So these are each contained in a frame. So I'm going to take them out of the frame. Oh no, I lost him. Okay, take them out of the frame, delete the frame. Just because you can see with frames that you have a title over each one, and it's kind of obstructing the view that we have here. We also know that these elements aren't being contained in the frame just because their name is outside of it. So I could also fix this by grabbing this one and making sure that it's within my frame. So yeah, we've got some icons here, and I think I need a bit of text to indicate what the icons mean. I just copied and pasted from there. We've got 24 people in the chat. Okay. And I don't know, I actually don't know what the chat thing means in Clubhouse. I don't actually use Clubhouse, so if I'm like totally butchering this, then like, I guess it's like, don't sue me, I don't know. There we go. change the color on that. And yeah, this is like not exactly what I did for the starter file. It looks like obviously a bit messier, but we're just going through this live. In my own time, I would probably polish this up, but this is kind of my first pass at like a pixel perfect design. So I'm going to do the same thing as before and just select all of the elements within this card and group them so that I can move the whole, there it went. Move the whole card around. Okay, so we've got 2 cards here. I'm not going to bother about the search bar. That would be the same way. I would take a rectangle, add an icon. Same with the avatar here. I would make a mask, add an image, and maybe add a stroke to it. But this is a good start, just in the interest of time. I'm going to duplicate these just to make a few more of these cards. And I noticed that these groups aren't being contained within my frame. So I need to make sure that they're in here. Oh no, not those ones. Okay, so we can see that there's kind of some overflow behavior happening here. We'll probably be wanting to scroll if this were a real interface. So we're gonna dive into that interaction next. So I mentioned before that the reason we kept the background as a rectangle and we didn't just use the frame is so that we could apply this, this overflow scrolling behavior. So right now, we've got the background, which is the same size as the frame, and we have all the elements that are within it. I'm gonna actually just select them all, pull it outside of the frame just so that I can deal with overflow a bit better. So we want to be able to scroll here. So I'm gonna make this rectangle as big as the scrolling will be, I guess, and just duplicate a bunch of these to fill that space. Yeah, that's probably enough. Okay, so we've got some overflow, and we're gonna select it all and then bring that back into the frame. So here we're going to be looking at the prototyping feature on this right panel that we haven't even touched yet. So beside design, which has all the specifications for your different layers or elements on your artboard, there's also prototype. Right now, it seems like there's not much going on. There's not going to be any interactions because I don't have any pages that are being flipped between. But we do notice that there's going to be overflow behavior, which refers to the scrolling, and I want to apply vertical scrolling here. And that's kind of a good start, I guess. I think that's about it. And to simulate that scrolling, I'm going to just add a little extra thing just to outline something to you later once we get to the presentation of this. But this is kind of the gradient that lives at the bottom of the screen that kind of indicates that more lives under the scroll. So we've got another rectangle here. We're going to apply another gradient. I'm gonna flip this around so the bottom is 100% opaque white. No, it probably doesn't need to be 100, like 60. And then the top is going to be completely transparent, just so that you can see it kind of gets hidden at the bottom here. Let's make this like 80. I'm not going to make the call to action that you can see on the starter file. It would be the same as any of the rectangles here, but we do have this gradient that's going to sit on top of the cards, and the cards are going to slide under this gradient. So when I'm looking at my frame, I'm going to select the entire thing, and never mind, I'm going to select the one, okay, let me approach this better. So like I said, you're going to have this gradient at the bottom where all the cards slide underneath. So we want to fix that gradient in position, because if I were to present what we have so far to you by clicking present in this top right corner, well, this is exciting. This is the first time you've seen it in action. We're scrolling, but we notice that that gradient scrolls with everything. And we want to fix that in position just so that we get that feeling that things are sliding under it. So, where was it? Doghouse. we're going to select that shape, and here under constraints, we're going to fix its position while scrolling. So go back to presentation, and I notice that it stays there. The gradient stays there forever. Okay. Yeah, I think we're done with the landing page here. We're going to work through the profile page just for fun, really, to see, just to apply some of the skills here. Maybe I'll kind of like tighten things up. Obviously, the alignment here is super great. This is not important, but my OCD is getting to me. In an ideal world, this would kind of live in the middle, but I was rushed. So for the next exercise, we're going to do the profile page. Maybe if you guys are working along with me, you can customize this page a bit more now that you've seen how all of these tools work. But the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're just going to be working through these same tools just as an application. In the interest of time, I think I'm going to skip past the loading animation, which was kind of that loading bar with the moving dog that you saw in the beginning. I think this is a reasonable thing to skip just because if you're presenting your designs in an exhibition, this would just be like an extra delight, but it doesn't really communicate your design to the judges. So I think we've got a good start here. We're going to be building another page just to show a bit more transition, show how prototypes are built. So I think I'm going to start by selecting this entire frame and duplicating it. Let's rename this frame by double clicking the text on top to landing page. And this one is going to be the profile page. So obviously to get to the profile page, I'm going to need a little avatar, which indicates profile at the top. I'm just going to copy this Jack Russell here and import an image the same way that I did before. This is Persephone's account that I'm using. So there she is. Maybe just as an extra layer, we're going to add a little background to her avatar. Set its position. Another thing to note, if your elements are overlaid like this, you can see that it just has to do with where they're oriented in relation to each other. So just with like a word processor, we want to bring Persephone to the front, but she is going to be fixed, much like that gradient rectangle at the bottom. So she's, or maybe she would move, I don't know. Oh, I know. She's gonna scroll with everything else, but I'm gonna bring this ellipse behind her. There we go. And that stroke is going to be white. Okay, so to access her profile, intuitively, I would click on
Courtney,
avatar. Yes, question?
someone asked if you're able to go over the overflow and scrolling at the end of again.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Why don't I duplicate this and then undo any of the prototyping stuff that I did before and just kind of walk through that really quickly again. Okay, so we started with this frame. I mentioned that we have this shape, which has a gradient to imply scrolling here. And if I were to present this, I mean, without scrolling behavior, we would be stuck here and I'm scrolling now and nothing's moving. So to get this to scroll, I would go to prototype here. There's a feature called Overflow Behavior. Click the drop down, select vertical scrolling. And if I do vertical scrolling and I present this, I notice that's the wrong thing I'm going to present to. Another thing to note is if you are, oh, where is it? Anyway, yeah, so in this one, hypothetically, this shape would move with everything. So we're going to fix it into position using the fixed position when scrolling. You'll notice that the elements or the layers change here. I wouldn't worry about it for now. It might become a hassle later when you're trying to fix some elements, but let other ones scroll. But for now, we notice that this shape is kind of fixed in position while we scroll. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. To be honest, this is like a skill or a tool that I only learned pretty recently. So I think this is pretty sophisticated, hence the name of this workshop. Yeah, so we've got a profile page. We're not going to need any of this stuff. In fact, I'm going to delete everything on this page by selecting everything within the layer, except for the background. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Select it all and delete it. We don't need it. All we need is Persephone's avatar, which I'm just going to duplicate, put it here, just make it big. It's not centered. It doesn't have to be perfect, or maybe it does. You know what? It has to be perfect because it's Persephone. So there we go. It's more centered. We're also going to need kind of a back button. I think I will be building a back button using, it's kind of like a chevron using the pen tool. So this, I don't know how, what this relates to in like other software that you might be using, but in this case, we're just going to be building lines and kind of connecting them. That looks like a chevron. I wouldn't worry too much about using the pen tool as a beginner. The pen tool is pretty difficult to grasp, but I'm just using this because it's easier for me now. But if you're making an icon like this, I would just import it from elsewhere. But here, I've got a perfect little chevron. I'm gonna increase its stroke. Okay. What other things can I show you on this page? We've got a settings button, which would live within my plugin icon lane. I'm just putting this in, not because we're going to be prototyping with it, just so that you can see me go through this process of importing an icon again. But settings, light. Oh no, not here. Where did it go? You know what? It's not important. We don't need it. Okay, so Persephone needs her title, her name. I'm gonna make this the same gray. No, I'm gonna get no. Snap this into position and increase its size. I'm just going to add a bit of filler text here to describe Persephone. I'm even just going to copy and paste it from the starter file, so you guys don't have to watch me painstakingly type this word for word. I notice that the text box is enormous. I'm going to resize this. Okay, cool. We're going to do left alignment here, snap it into position, and change font size. I'm not going to go through the process of showing the followers or following. Just in the interest of time, this is just a repetition of adding any kind of text. Same with the part that says who nominated her into Doghouse, which was Nisha, of course. Right now, we just have 2 pages, and I think you guys would like to know how you prototype between pages. So let's just make sure these are living in the right frame. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to be looking at a bit more prototyping in our last few minutes with this tutorial. And we've got our landing page and profile page. And when I click this avatar, I kind of want the profile page to slide in. So we're going to prototype that interaction by coming into the prototype tool. From here, I would select a frame. And I notice that when I do that, this plus button or this little dot appears. And this just indicates what element is your starting element, like which element is being acted on to initiate some sort of interaction. So for us, we're going to click on the avatar because it's when you click on that, that should initiate the page change. So from here, I would drag this plus sign and drag it right to the frame that I want it to take me to. And I notice that this interaction details modal pops up, and I see that on tap. So when I tap that avatar, it'll navigate to profile. And this is very customizable. I could do different kinds of interactions, like maybe when I'm dragging that avatar, something happens, or when I hover over it, maybe when I press it. You can also do, if you're selecting a frame, you can have an interaction happen after a certain amount of time, so after delay, but right now, the default is going to be on tap. It's going to navigate to profile. And in the animation, this just indicates how that transition looks like. So something like instant, I could probably show you what that looks like by going into presentation mode again. So if we're here and we click on it, an instant, it just pops up. It doesn't have any like sliding thing that I mentioned before. So that's like not quite good enough. So we're going to modify this transition a bit better by selecting from the different animations here. And I want it to move in, preferably from the right. So when I select move in, I can see that there's like different ways that this can slide in. And right now I want it to slide in from the right. So this arrow is right. And ease out just has to do with like what happens to the page that it is replacing. And this means that the page, landing page, is going to ease out in 300 milliseconds. So that sounds pretty good. We'll show you what that looks like. Oh no, I have to go back. Click this, slides in. And we want to do the same thing to get back to the landing page. So I'm going to click on the chevron, drag the prototype to that first page. And instead of moving in, we want that page to move back out again. So I'm going to say move out and have it move out to the left. So this should basically mirror what just happened. So we want to see that. Moves out, moves back in. So I hope I was able to kind of cover the entire range of different transitions you can do. Obviously, you would have to really play around with them to see what feels best for the product that you're building. I realize I didn't get to cover a lot of the stuff that you can see in the starter file, but I do cover the different tools that are used to achieve them in that file if you wanted to check out. Is there anything that I can cover before we wrap up this part of the workshop? Is there anything that like people are just like dying to learn how to do that I could maybe show them really quickly that's related to this? That could be like a cool transition or a cool addition to this prototype that we've built. I'll open up the floor to anyone who has requests. If not, I can tell you guys a bit more about some of the resources or different ways that you might be presenting, or different tools that you can use to present these designs when you do have that opportunity. So like we've seen here, I've just been jumping into presentation mode to show you this like live prototype here, where you can kind of flip through the different pages that exist in your prototype. You can restart it by going back. So say like I got stuck on the second page and for some reason this was broken and I couldn't go back to the first page. I could restart the whole, I could restart the whole prototype and come back to the landing page. But if you want to customize the way that you're presenting this a bit more, you can see that you can change the device that you're doing presentation mode on. Like I use an SE, I want to see what this looks like on my sad little SE. It just like doesn't work. We don't have any responsive design here. So it's not going to fit because I built the frame for the iPhone 11. But if I wanted to see how that worked, that's how this would work. And on top of that, if you're presenting, you can also change the color of the background. Maybe we want this to be the dusky purple that we saw before. This is just to give you a bit more confidence in presenting your work when you do have the chance. So You can change the model of the device you're presenting on if you so wish. Doesn't really make much of a difference. But yeah, I think Figma is a great place for you to start to, if you're doing a demo, if you're wanting to communicate a product, just sharing a prototype like this is very effective to like getting like a stakeholder or the judges a sense of what the product might achieve as it comes to life. So yeah, I understand this is a very small prototype. I think it's a good start for anyone who's just seeing these tools for the first time and want to get a sense of like how you can take like simple tools and build something a bit more sophisticated. Yeah, that's it for this, but I will walk you through some of the resources that I promised to share with you. If there aren't any other questions in the meantime. Good. Okay, so back to our starter file. So I guess first I would love to thank you all for tuning into this quick little crash course on how to get started in Figma, how to build something cute or something serious. Obviously everything's very customizable. You can even take the template of what we've done here and apply it to your product if you need some sort of landing page for a mobile device and you'd need to show that interaction. So I hope that you were able to learn something, if not a lot of things, that'll kind of get you kickstarted with being able to design an interface for this project or for any other product related project that you're working on. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. If you're wanting to kind of dive a bit deeper and use a few more tools to kind of achieve the designs that you want, a good place to start if you're looking for different graphics for your user interface. Like I said, you can get icons using the plugin that I use. Those ones are pretty limited. If I'm not able to find an icon that I want from here, I would go to Figma Community, which I can show you really quickly. So on the home page of Figma, we see in beta is this feature called Community. And within here lives a whole bunch of resources for anyone to use. These are made by designers or different people within the Figma community for everyone to use. So, I mean, I already have this pulled up, but if I wanted icons, I would type into Figma Community and it would pull up a bunch of files, including icons that I can use in my own projects. Some of them have different kinds of licensing, so definitely read the fine print if you're wanting to use these. But this is a good place to start if you kind of need that basis of like iconography in your projects. On top of that, if you need illustrations, I've tagged a plugin called Blush, which you can get kind of like vector illustrations of people, of objects or whatever. If you want to use that to make your designs come to life, as well as stock images from Pexels. I use that all the time for like real content. Like I mentioned before, with Figma, you can't really preview the typefaces that you're using in your product. So going to Google Fonts is a great place to kind of see like what typeface might suit the vibe or the user experience that you want to achieve. When it comes to colors, I use a tool called Coolers, which basically generates random color palettes. So yeah, if you don't have like much of a visual design background and you don't even know what colors to start with, this is a great place to go. You can select like how many colors you need and just kind of like shuffle through them until you find one that suits you. As well as Dribble. I'm not sure if many of you use it already, but this is a great place to find inspiration from graphic designers, UX designers, any kind of like product. You can just like scroll for hours through like gorgeous designs and gorgeous products. People do like case studies and post them on Dribble. So this is a great place if you don't even know where to start and you'd like to just see something pretty to inspire you. If you were trying to save a prototype and you want to show it in like your portfolio or something, and you need either like static images, using a tool called Artboard Studio Mockups would be how you would mock your designs up on different kinds of devices. You could even like show mock-ups of like, if I wanted to put this prototype onto like a coffee mug, I could probably use this tool to show Doghouse on a coffee mug. So this is a great tool. I've tagged it here, of course. And I did mention that if you are looking to pursue UX design and you need a better sense of how to approach user-centric design, you would like to know more about the principles involved with UX design, here are some resources that I used as a beginner designer. This is a website that was built by, I think she is a student, and she just kind of compiled all of her favorite designs. So this is a great place to start if you need to brush up on like UX terminology, even just like product terminology in general. Norman Nielsen Group is where kind of like the main community of like user-centric design lives. There's a lot of great articles here on like different methodologies for design, including like user research, user testing, different methodologies like user journeys or user stories. You can learn more about those here. And then of course, kind of the principles of UX design, I would suggest reading up on those if you would like to, pursue design more as a career or just kind of learn more about it. I think that's all for me, just like talking at you. I'd love to answer any questions from anyone. Feel free to just ping us in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so that I can be more attentive to what's going on in Zoom right now. I can figure out how to do this. Stop share. Nice. Okay. Whew. Okay, I'm done talking.
Yeah, I think there aren't too many questions popping up in the chat. There's just a lot of love for the workshop. I think everyone enjoyed that a ton.
Sweet.
So if there is nothing really to add to that, Ratchet, or and I think we can go ahead and close off our workshop for today. Thank you so much, Courtney, for leading that. That was amazing. I know I don't know if the recording shows up. Sorry, if the chat shows up in the recording, but there is so much appreciation for all the preparation that you did, and we could tell that this was done with a lot of love and care. So we appreciate it. Awesome. So thank you everyone for joining as well. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. I hope you're ready to build out and prototype the product that your teams have come up with over the first day of the Produthon, and especially for tomorrow as you really get into iterating over your prototypes. And yeah, it's late. We know you've had a full day full of exploring problem spaces, researching and writing reports. So we'll let everyone get on with their evenings. But first, let's give a round of virtual applause for our wonderful workshop host, Courtney.
Thanks. So happy to be here. Thanks for tuning in so late, guys.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll see you bright and early 9 a.m. tomorrow for all of you Produthon competitors. And yeah, I think we can end the recording there. I think Courtney might stick around if anybody wants